that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. So lovely earth can stay lovely still.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Energy Week with George Harvey, me, and the famous Tom Fennell.
In the flesh.
In the flesh, world traveler, philosopher,
Man about town.
man about town, philanthropist, you name it. And every day I got up late today.
What, 5 o'clock?
5 o'clock.
Oh my God.
Oh my gosh. What is this all about? Every day I get up early. 5 o'clock is late, and I take a look at the energy news about energy and climate change, and I put it up. Any article that is interesting, I try to put into a 50 or 55 word synopsis with a link to the original article, and I put up 10 to 15 of these at my blog every day, and I have done that 1,800 and some odd times in a row without a single failure. And having said that, I realize that
Jinx.
yeah, maybe I've jinxed myself. Nevertheless, that's what I do, and the blog is called geoharvey.com, and then Tom and I talk about the most interesting 20 or so of these every week at this show, which is recorded on Thursday mornings. Today is the 20th of July, so we will
Ready, huh?
We will start with last Thursday, which was the 13th of July.
Well, I just want to mention that some of these articles are very well covered and in depth. And
Yep.
we could do a whole show on some of them.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them, I'm sure, would be very enjoyable for our listeners to watch. And if I can remember, I'll try and remind you of why you might want to look at one.
And you know, one thing I want to mention, I don't think that we'll necessarily do it next week, but next week or the week after, I'm going to have a show put together that you and I can do as an extra, which is going to talk about just climate change and the damage that is already being done by climate change. We've seen a lot of that.
Almost every week we talk about one or two or three
items,
subjects.
yeah.
That's exactly the same thing. So,
and some of them are just undeniably. I can't imagine how anybody could think that these things are not the result of climate change. In fact, they have to be the result of climate change. There's no other explanation. And
I think some of the people who are claiming this is a fraud know that it's not.
yeah, and unfortunately we've got one as president. I'm not sure he does know that it's not, but he makes the claim anyway, because I think that he's a man who unfortunately is arrogantly self-informed. His information comes from himself and his advisors, who have their own reasons for saying the things they do, but they have nothing to do with reality. Reality does have a habit of catching up with you if you it's like that old ad, it's not nice to try to fool Mother Nature.
Yeah.
Okay.
As we talk about one, there's a picture that unfortunately we can't put up on the screen, but it shows it well. When we get to it, I'll talk to it. I'll talk about it.
All right. Well, we have a picture for our first story. We can start now.
We do.
And I've got the picture scheduled to go up.
And here's the picture.
There's the picture. This is from a story from Inhabitat.
I had it up. Oh, you want to know what the title's going to be?
I do. It would be nice.
Landowners install solar panels in the path of the Keystone XL pipeline.
People are still fighting this pipeline. Many Nebraska landowners are opposed to the Keystone XL pipeline slashing through their land, so they're fighting the proposed oil pipeline with clean, renewable energy. Activists launched the Solar XL campaign to install solar panels on land that Nebraska locals refused to sell directly in the path of the pipeline. This pipeline is not getting off to a good start.
Well, from this article, it says the need for the KXL pipeline product is non-existent in the United States.
Yeah.
The monetary benefit to the peoples of Nebraska will be gone in 7 years, while the risks to our state are for the life of this pipeline.
Yeah, and who knows how long that is. But last week we had an article in which they were talking about the fact that the owners of the Keystone XL pipeline were scrambling to find organizations.
They're not able to fill it.
They couldn't put
That's
oil through it.
interesting.
Yeah, isn't it? And now we've got more news on that. I think it may have been today, so it's not going to be something we'll talk about. But there's a lawsuit going on.
This next one is the one I was referring to.
It's CNN.
From CNN, higher seas to flood dozens of U.S. cities.
Yes.
And in this article is a flood map.
Yes.
And this is very interesting because the flood map, there's 2 flood maps.
Yes.
One is what happened during the last hurricane, and it's a picture of just Long Island, New York. The next one is what is projected to happen in 2100. They're virtually identical.
Really? Yeah. Okay. Did you read the title of this?
Higher seas to flood dozens of U.S. cities.
Right. For the past several years, scientists have been trying to get people to wake up to the dangers that lie ahead in rising seas due to climate change. A study from the Union of Concerned Scientists includes a list naming hundreds of U.S. cities, large and small, that may not make it through the next 20, 50, or 80 years due to sea level rise. A couple of weeks ago, we had a story of a community called Ile de Jean Charles in Louisiana.
Yeah.
And
there's almost nothing left.
Yeah, and the federal government is paying, I don't know, what was it, $50 million to move 200 people or something to higher ground because their community is being destroyed.
They were like inches above sea level there.
Yeah, and they'd lost 98% of the property.
Wow.
That they were on. It used to be they were able to hunt, and in addition to fishing, which they were doing, and they could do a little agriculture and stuff like that. But the sea level rise is getting them now. Miami is putting $500 million into raising roads because they have flooding every time you've got a full or new.
About that.
Yep, full or new moon.
I'm not sure if that's not good money after bad.
Well. Every time there's a full or new moon, they flood.
They flood, right.
And the high tide during those times is the highest. The road engineers had not known that the sea levels were going to rise, so they built the roads so that they would be just barely above the highest of those high tides.
So they could drain.
So they could drain. And then they built drains that ran through there. And now what happens is, at the highest tide, the drains run the wrong way.
Drains are working backwards.
Yep, and they flood the roads, and people have to drive through salt water, or not at all. And they're spending $500 million raising those, and they figure that's going to be good for the next 35 years. But what happens after that?
Can they jack the whole city up?
That's an interesting question. Maybe they'll figure out a way to do that.
There's a quick takeaway here. According to the study, in the intermediate scenario, they've had several scenarios about what might happen. In the intermediate one, about 30 cities with populations over 100,000 face chronic inundation by 2100. That means they're going to be wet part of the time, all the time.
Yeah.
In the high scenario, the number rises to more than 50. It includes Boston, Miami, Oakland, and 4 to 5 boroughs of New York City. Wow.
Parts of Staten Island.
And we just mentioned here, 90 communities are considered inundated today, mostly in Louisiana and Maryland, where the seas are rising and the land is sinking.
And I've read that every community that is within 25 miles of New Orleans that isn't inside the dikes is going to have to be evacuated within 20 years.
Wow.
So
kind of scary.
It is kind of scary. That was from CNN. And our next item comes from PV Tech.
And it is. Oh, there's a nice picture there. Why don't I get it up?
Let's put that up.
Yeah,
somebody might like seeing that. That's not a scary picture. It's just a sunrise.
Nice picture, though.
In Cornwall.
In what?
Cornwall. It's the name of a town.
Oh. First ever 1 gigawatt solar park to be commissioned imminently. That's a big solar park.
It's a big solar park. The largest solar park in the world is being grid synchronized in Kurnool in the Indian state of Andhra Pradesh. It is the first ever solar park to reach 1 gigawatt of grid-tied capacity. The Andhra Pradesh Solar Power Corporation noted on its website that the final 20 megawatts of the park is scheduled for commissioning by the 13th of July.
So it's happened already.
Yes, it should have happened.
A little bit of trivia, by the way. If you've noticed that word Pradesh and wondered what it means?
Yeah.
It means state.
Yeah.
Like New York State.
I kind of gathered that because everything is Pradesh.
Yeah, Andhra Pradesh, this Pradesh, that Pradesh.
You know what it reminds me of? I have a friend who went to school, lived in a community in Wales, and she said that I don't understand. She didn't know anything about Welsh, and she said everything is dim this and dim that. Dim is the Welsh word for no. So where they want you, no parking, they'll say dim, dim parkio. Dim this and dim that. Okay, so we should move on. Our next item is from Friday, July 14th, and it comes from Clean Technica.
Wastewater from fracking pollutes Pennsylvania watershed.
Wastewater.
That doesn't come as a surprise.
No. Wastewater from, I just lost it. My computer screen is jumping around. Here we go. Wastewater from fracking has contaminated a watershed in Pennsylvania with organic chemicals, salts, radium, and alkaline earth metals. Some pollutants are associated with endocrine system changes and others are with carcinogens. Fracking produces half of the oil and 2/3 of the natural gas extracted in the United States. And I wonder how long people are going to put up with that.
Well, the takeaway from this article is talking about Pennsylvania. Fracking produces about 1.7 billion gallons of polluted wastewater every year.
Yeah.
The effluent is treated and then released into the environment. But what is in the wastewater is a closely guarded industrial secret.
What kind of environmental protections have we got here?
The harm done by fracking and other fossil fuel exploration may not be known for decades.
Yeah, and then once it's known, you can't do anything about it because you don't know what it is. They'd have to analyze it to figure out what it is. Thank you very much, to the federal government for allowing that to happen.
And the question is cheap energy worth the harm it can cause to ourselves, our children, and future generations?
Well, the answer to that is absolutely not. We've got better ways of doing things.
The answer is yes.
Well, for many Americans, for many Americans, science is baloney. They're going to have to live with it. It's like buying junk food on credit cards and for everybody in your town and just running up a debt, making people sick. Anyway, okay, should we get away from that? We've got an article coming.
We got some nice pictures. A nice picture coming.
Yeah, this is an article in Bloomberg, and this article is just an amazing set of pictures.
There's a lot of pictures. This is a very good article. Very good.
This is worth looking at.
If you like slideshows.
Yeah.
And this is just one of them. And if you look carefully, you'll see there's a dam there, and there's solar panels on the dam.
Yeah. The face of the dam is covered with solar panels.
Japan's renewable energy revolution.
A set of images from a series of flights over Tokyo and the Kobe, Osaka regions of Japan show a range of PV projects on former golf courses, quarries, dams, man-made islands, and floating projects on ponds and reservoirs. They add a new look on the energy and climate change. And the floating ones, you can grow fish under those floating ones.
Yeah, we'll be talking about one of the floating ones a little later on.
Yes, we will.
This is a vast, unused resource.
Well, we
got lakes and reservoirs all over America.
We do. I did a calculation once of the amount of power that was needed if we were going to do solar plus storage, just those two, in Vermont, the amount of power that would be needed to power the entire state. Now, I wasn't interested in storage. Obviously, there'd have to be a lot of storage. But if you put the solar on floating on Lake Champlain, it would have taken a tiny part of Lake Champlain.
That's interesting.
You know, in tiny 10% or less.
Yeah.
I don't remember the exact number, but it's not a huge amount, you know. But anyway, there we go. That particular article in Bloomberg, and this is at geoharvey.com on the 14th of July. You can go to the geoharvey.com and click on the calendar if you want to, on the date, July 14th, if you want to see that. Okay, our next item is from...
Did we read that one?
Yeah. We did indeed.
Huh? Okay.
I could read it again, but I'm pretty sure we did.
Go for it again.
Okay, a set of images on a series of flights over Tokyo and Kobe, Osaka regions of Japan show a range of PV projects on former golf courses, quarries, dams, man-made islands, and floating projects on ponds and reservoirs. They add a new look on energy and climate change. Our next item is from Economic Times, and this is dealing with India.
Indian Railways launches first solar-powered diesel electrical multiple unit train.
This is kind of impressive. Indian Railways launched the first solar-powered DEMU, diesel electric multiple unit train, and I'm not going to, well, okay, from the Safdarjung railway station in Delhi. The train will run between railway stations in Delhi and Haryana. I could have put the names of the stations in, but the other one is...
Where they are.
It's
a commuter train.
Yeah. Each of 6 coaches has 16 30-watt, 300-watt rather, solar panels. The train also has battery backup power on which it can run for at least 72 hours.
Now this article's a little bit deceptive. When I first looked at it, I thought the solar power was running the train.
Yeah.
And it's not.
Yeah.
It's running all the secondary equipment like the air conditioning, the fans, the lights, which ordinarily would be powered by the locomotive.
Right.
So they're saving a lot of diesel fuel by
Yes.
powering these things
But
with the sun.
that also explains why they can have 72 hours of backup.
Yeah, right.
Because they don't need huge batteries to keep this thing going. I read that and I said, 72 hours? Are you kidding me? No, it's 72
this is
hours of
significant
running
because the
fans.
railway is expecting to save around 5,000 gallons of diesel fuel a year doing this.
That's significant.
That's significant.
Yeah, it is. Okay, we are up to Saturday, July 15th, and we
nice
have a
picture coming
have a
up.
picture here of, and I've got a comment on this picture. Put that up. Now
Here
tell
it
me,
is.
Tom, honestly, does that look like a Salvador Dali painting to you?
Well, it could be if he had a couple of melting faces in it.
Yeah,
Kind of a nice little spot, though.
it is. I met Salvador Dali when I was young.
Oh, have you? Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I did.
Did you ask him about his mustache?
No, I did not. But you know, in those days, what he loved to do, if you were carrying a sketch pad or something like the notebook, he would ask you if you wanted an autograph from him.
Okay.
So you hand him your sketch pad, and what he would do is he would take a pencil,
Yeah.
and he would put his autograph in, and then dot the I in Dali. And he would dot the I by driving the point of the pencil in through as many pages as he could. And then he would flip through it until there was an unbroken page and do the whole thing all over again. And I knew a guy who had about 16 autographs of Salvador Dali, which was the result of his wrecking an entire sketchbook. Oh, well.
Well, we'll talk about this one.
This is
Chile.
Yeah, go ahead.
Chile energy minister sees low power prices falling further on record low renewables prices.
Yeah, ETEnergyWorld.com produced this article. Record low renewable energy prices in Chile are here to stay. There's actually another article coming up. I think it'll be next week. But they are here to stay and will likely push power prices even lower. Chile's energy minister told Reuters, a development that would pressure the nation's already squeezed diesel and natural gas industries. Chile, with ample solar and wind resources, has become a poster child for renewable energy. Chile is going to be one of those countries that just switches to renewable energy very quickly, I suspect.
Well, they don't have any oil. I mean, so why not?
Yeah, why not? And they've got lots of resources. You know, they've
A lot of mountains. They got a lot of hydro.
they
potential
have
anyhow.
got just think about tidal power in Chile.
Yeah.
Chile has coastline that's probably equal to the size of the coastline in the United States. It's
a long coastline.
unbelievable,
Yeah.
and it's full of islands and fjords
Yeah,
and all
yeah.
kinds of crazy stuff. So yeah, it's a big. I've forgotten how many. It may be half the size of the United States coastline, but it's.
If they
it's a
stretched
lot
it
of
all
stuff.
out, it's pretty damn long. I mean,
Yeah.
it's long on the map, but if they took care of all of those inlets and islands.
Yeah,
and all that-
absolutely. Okay, should we continue?
Yeah, let's move on.
Our next item is from Clean Technica.
House defeats anti-climate amendment with Republican help.
Republicans are not all united against renewable energy. The House of Representatives voted down an amendment to block a requirement in the pending National Defense Authorization Act for the armed forces to study the impact of climate change on the military. Those who voted against the measure included 43 Republicans. They wanted to tell the military that it could not study climate change.
Yeah.
And the military is going to the Congress year after year after year after year after year and saying this is one of our biggest problems, or possibly our biggest national security problem, because of the military implications of climate change. And you know, it's a huge problem, and
Which they have to be ready for.
they have to be ready for it. Exactly. This would be. It's voting against American security. It's appalling.
It's interesting, this article. I won't read the whole paragraph, but this guy does not like Trump.
There's more than one person who doesn't like Trump. I don't think Trump is as bad as some
He calls
people.
him the tweeter-in-chief.
The tweeter achiever. I read in the news today that tweeter-in-chief.
Yeah.
Yeah. I read today the Trump's record in the White House, 991 tweets
He mustn't do anything else.
and 0 bills patched. Okay, our next item is from New Hampshire Public Radio.
A little closer to home.
Yeah,
National Grid, which is a utility company,
and worldwide.
holding community meetings on proposed transmission project.
National Grid is holding community meetings to gather input and discuss details of its proposed Granite State Power Link project, which would bring hydropower from Canada through New Hampshire to southern New England. The Granite State Power Link project would also cross northeastern Vermont.
Well, there's a backstory here. There is an existing plan called the Eversource Northern Pass Plan.
Yes.
In New Hampshire, entirely in New Hampshire, and of course Quebec. That's under a lot of attack.
Yes.
And this is an alternative to that.
Yeah.
And the big difference is that the Granite State Power Link uses 6 new miles of transmission lines, whereas the Northern Pass uses 40 new miles. The big difference in the transmission line corridors that each of them are going to require.
Is there anything in that article, I don't remember, about the costs of these things?
There is, but I didn't write it down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
People
had the
don't
cost. I
rea-
had the cost on this one. I don't think I had the cost on the Northern Pass.
Well, people don't realize how much these things cost. That's one of the first things I would say. How much transmission lines cost. They're just incredibly expensive.
They are very expensive.
Yeah. A mile of transmission line is going to cost millions and millions of dollars.
I think they're soft pedaling that.
Well, I keep coming back to that transmission line that got canceled in Long Island because people in the eastern part of the island were putting solar
Generating their own
panels.
power, so they didn't need the transmission line.
But the transmission line was going to cost almost $500 million.
Yeah, I can believe that.
You know, if
You
I
got to
had
figure it probably costs about the same thing as building a highway.
if I had $500 million in the bank, I'd feel very secure.
I don't think I'd be building transmission lines. Yeah, let's move along. We've got a very long but very interesting article coming up here.
This is from the Denver Post, and this is Sunday, July 16th.
National Renewable Energy Laboratory optimistic in the face of Trump's budget cuts. Now, we've talked about these guys before.
Yep, we've got a picture on this, by the way, Tom.
Yeah, let me get the picture up.
This is from the Denver Post. Researchers in the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, which is also called NREL, which had its 40th birthday on July 5th, have been innovating and contributing to the Colorado and national economy through 7 presidential administrations. The laboratory's future is uncertain under President Trump, but workers are keeping up hopes. And you know, one of the things about this project is it produces far more than it costs.
I've got a list of that because this is a think tank. These people are paid to dream up things.
Yeah.
And I got a whole list of stuff that they have worked on. Solar cells that can be spray painted onto windows.
Yep.
Printed at Home Depot. Power grids that can take in a wide portfolio of traditional and renewable energy and adapt to changing environments. Homes with appliances that communicate with each other to share power between electric cars, water heaters, appliances, and even neighbors. Hydrogen cars that can travel 300 miles with only a 3-minute charge. And these guys are researching this stuff.
Yep.
And then licensing it.
Yes.
Giving it away, basically.
Yes. And this picture,
I'll put the picture up again.
yeah, this picture
Rather
shows
pretty.
wind turbines that they are testing.
Yep.
They're trying to find whatever it is they're trying to learn about these wind turbines.
Yeah, if you look at them, the wind turbines are all slightly different.
Well, not only are they different, but they're pointing in different directions. You'll notice that the wind turbines in the foreground and the one on the right in the background all have the blades on the right side of the mast. The other one, the larger one on the left in the distance, has its blades on the other side of the mast.
Whatever that's worth.
Well, there's a reason there, and the reason is because those little ones in the foreground, for example, are really small, and the position of the wind turbine blades is determined by being blown around by the wind. The one that's in the background with a white, thick mast is driven to face into the wind by a motor attached to something that determines which way the wind is blowing. And the reason it does that is because with that thick mast, it's going to have a weight behind the mast that reduces the power. So you want the blades to be on the wind.
To get the wind first.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
that's right.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, you wouldn't think that it'd make much of a difference, but it certainly makes enough difference to these engineers.
Yeah, and the difference that you can get out of wind turbines just from software engineering is really kind of stunning. It's like
They can tailor the blades to the wind.
They can tailor the blades. They can tailor the activity of the wind turbine, and they can do other things, like they can shut the wind turbine down if there's bats flying around. You know, it's all stuff that is coming along.
Okay, the next one.
Yes.
The EIA, you'll tell us what that is.
Yes, of course.
Coal to edge out natural gas in 2017.
Yep. You can get rid of the picture, I think.
Yeah, I think I will.
This is from the Huntington Herald Dispatch, still July 16th. The EIA is the Energy Information Administration, and its monthly short-term energy outlook report projects coal will fuel 31.3% of the electricity in the U.S. in 2017. I want to tell you, the EIA projections are always way off. You never trust anything that is forward-looking from the EIA. But they're saying that they expect to get 31.3% of electricity from coal this year, as compared with 31.1% for natural gas. Now, natural gas outperformed coal last year.
Yeah.
Coal stood at 30.4 last year, and natural gas at 33.8%. The coal industry takes the change, small as it is, as welcome news. I want to point out that 31.3 plus 31.1 is 62.4. That's for this year. So coal and natural gas will do 62.4% of our electricity, where last year it was 64.2. So this is a big reduction in natural gas. And because of that big reduction, the fossil fuels, coal and natural gas combined, are being reduced. And of course, what's coming in to replace them? It isn't nuclear.
For sure.
It's renewable energy.
Well, that's
So-
just interesting development, and it's just a burp.
Yeah.
It's not permanent.
No, it's not. So we're up to July 17th.
But I just had a sentence here I wanted to see if it was worth
Oh,
reading or
okay,
not.
go ahead.
Well, production of coal is up in the first 6 months of 2017
Yes.
in West Virginia. This article came from West Virginia.
Yes.
After 8 years of an administration that was attacking coal, now we are seeing the beginning of what can happen when there is support for coal on a federal level. That's wishful thinking.
I was going to say that sounds fatuous.
I think the big market for American coal right now is export.
Exports are up.
Yeah.
There's no question that.
I think
but,
as a
I-
fuel for electricity generation, it's a zombie.
I don't think we've got any new coal plants being built, but I know that there's a bunch of them that are scheduled to be shut down.
Yeah. Well,
And-
we talked about that.
Mm-hmm.
Not just here.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
France just shuttered them all up.
Britain.
Was it Britain?
Yeah,
A whole
the-
bunch of like 30 coal plants or something like that.
Oh, that might have been France.
Yeah, I think it was.
Okay,
Let's
we
move
are
along.
up
We got a
to
nice picture coming
July
up
17th, and we've got a picture of ruins.
here. This is
I'll bet there's-
a nice picture.
I
though.
bet there's runes on
This
those
is the
ruins.
Orkney Islands in Scotland, and I bet you they're beautiful.
I had a friend who went there. He liked it very much. I've never been there. I'd like to visit, but of course that isn't going to happen.
I'm going to put the picture back up. Better
Could
looking
do
than you.
it. This is from Yale Environment 360.
So this is a long and interesting article, and there's a lot of nice pictures of the ruins in the Orkney.
Yeah.
They're all over the place there. Heritage at risk. How rising seas threaten ancient coastal ruins.
The shores of Scotland's Orkney Islands are dotted with ruins that date to the Stone Age. But after enduring for millennia, these archaeological sites, along with many others from Easter Island to Jamestown, are facing an existential threat from climate change. Those
Part of
seas,
this article mentioned that the faces on, what's that island? Easter Island.
Easter Island,
Some of them are in danger of falling into the sea.
right? And I mean, you hear about climate change producing ocean level rises, which are causing trouble. How much have the seas rised? A couple of inches, a few inches. And so what? But it turns out that the so what part of this is, there's a
That's
lot.
significant.
It is significant.
And the storm intensity is increasing because of this.
Which means
so
that
there's a little bit more water,
Yeah.
but there's a lot more wind.
I used to live on a peninsula. It was with a tidal estuary around it in Massachusetts. And when Hurricane Bob came through, the high tide that happened after that was extraordinarily
Really
high. And the tide, not the hurricane, but the tide, was high enough to cover the roads. And
Wow.
when the roads are covered with water like that, it's significant what that can do to vehicles.
It's also pretty dangerous because
It's-
you don't know what's under the water.
Well, even if you know the road and you know that it's safe, you know there's only an inch of water there. Because like in that particular case, I didn't go through it. In an emergency, I would have gone through it. It would have been about 3 inches of water, but you don't want to take your car through salt water.
No, because it's going to rot.
And heavier storms. I remember watching waves hit a seawall at a place where I worked, and the waves hit the seawall so hard. First of all, they knocked the seawall out. They washed stones that were like this, this wide. I'm going to guess 3-4 tons.
I'm glad you're on TV so they could see that.
Yeah, it washed them out to sea. They were buried in the sand,
Wow.
30, 40, 50 feet out on the shore. But it hit the seawall so hard that the waves went up in the air, straight up, to the top of a 3-story warehouse, and then they got picked up by the wind, and the wind blew them over the warehouse, and they came down in the parking lot.
You'd almost think they couldn't do that.
Well, it was impressive,
It was
but washing several ton stones out to sea,
Yeah.
you wouldn't think that they would do that either.
Right.
But as we get heavier storms, I was there for Hurricane Bob and the perfect storm, both of them.
Mm-hmm.
We were without electricity for a week to 10 days after each, and they were only 2 months apart. But in those, when as the sea level rises just a little bit, it's a problem. And when you throw onto that more significant storms, that means that the sea level rise for the storm is much more than it would have been. And so it is a problem,
So
a
these
serious
things
problem.
are cumulative.
Yeah, and of course at the storm, you wash the beaches out to sea. I had a neighbor who wound up having a yacht in his backyard.
Oh, goody.
Yeah, oh goody.
Did he get to keep it?
No, he didn't. But you know, I mean, it's a little inconvenient to have somebody have to come and lift a yacht off your backyard. This is not something that...
A little inconvenient.
A little
I'll buy
inconvenient,
that.
yeah. So anyway, should we go on?
Yeah, let's move to India here.
India. And this
Tata Motors
Yep. This
develops India's first biomethane bus that will help reduce emissions.
This is from Financial Express. A commercial vehicles wing of Tata Motors showcased the first bio-CNG or biomethane bus at Urja Utsav event in Pune, Maharashtra. Along with a new alternative fuel bus, Tata Motors also showcased 3 engines compatible with biomethane fuel for light, intermediate, and medium commercial vehicles. And that, I think, may be an interesting development for the future that will just take
It
us
goes
off.
along with something we talked about last week.
What's that?
There was a bus that was going to run on liquid methane.
Yes, okay. Yeah.
There are a lot of smart people working on this
There
stuff.
are a lot of people working on these things. There's no question about that. Moving on.
Yeah, let's move to the next one.
Renew Economy. They brought us this next one.
LO3 unveils a game-changing solar sharing microgrid in South Australia.
Yeah, LO3. This is from Brooklyn, New York.
Yeah,
The
we
U-
talked about it.
Yeah, we had this. We talked about this on the show. The U.S.-based masterminds behind a microgrid in Brooklyn unveiled their first Australian project in South Australia. They said it could herald the start of an industry-changing renewable energy sharing revolution. The project will see up to 6 megawatts of distributed solar generation made available on a local peer-to-peer trading platform. And this is an interesting development, I think. It's the kind of thing that could happen all over the place.
Well, they're using some computer technology called blockchain.
Yes,
And Bitcoin is based on blockchain.
yes,
And it's a program that helps you gather information from many sources and distribute it the way you want to.
Mhm.
And that's what they're doing here. They're finding out who's making electricity, who wants electricity, and setting up a
putting them
deal
together.
between them.
yeah, yeah.
And it's pretty damn clever.
it is.
In Brooklyn, it's only a small neighborhood. And if your house doesn't have the ability to put on solar power and your next door neighbor does, you just go through this computer program. It's probably in somebody's laptop.
Actually, it won't be in somebody's laptop.
No?
No, blockchain is
It's
really, really difficult to hack into. And the reason
Uh-huh.
is because the program itself is distributed. So
Oh.
the information is distributed.
Okay.
So in order to hack it, you've got to hack all of the computers simultaneously. That's a daunting
Sounds
challenge.
like it's a little difficult.
Yeah, yeah. I think blockchain is the kind of thing that could be used for national security. You know, the CIA might be using this
Yeah, I'm sure they
because
are. Yeah.
because
It's virtually uncrackable, huh?
I don't know about virtually uncrackable, but I think it's beyond
Very
the
difficult.
beyond the abilities of the normal
Yeah.
kind of.
Well, that's good.
I mean, you might be able to get into one computer and find out what's going on, but it's a different thing if you want to overwrite the records, because
You can't do it.
You can't do it because they're distributed.
Well, there's a takeaway from this, and that is that this technology will be spreading.
Yes, absolutely, it will be. And should we move on?
Yeah, we got a nice picture coming
We
up
have a
here.
picture
we were
coming up,
talking
and
about
this is
floating
on
panels.
Tuesday, July 18th.
And here is some floating panels.
And this is Time Magazine.
Interesting, those panels there, they're not sitting on those little mattresses there. The little mattresses form a matrix
Yeah.
that are holding these panels. And, well, we'll talk about it a little
Yeah.
bit more as we get into
Got
the
a
article.
title for this?
Yeah, there's a lot of pictures in this one.
Yeah, there's a lot of pictures.
This is a very interesting
And some of them are really good pictures.
How China floated to the top in solar. Is that a pun?
Yeah, I guess. After years of growth and pollution, China is changing tack and embracing sustainability. I mean, this goes beyond solar floating on reservoirs and things. No longer beholden to the singular tenet of growth at any cost, which, by the way, almost on the face of it is unsustainable. Growth
By definition.
By definition. China is now the world's largest renewable energy investor, and the U.S. has relinquished its leadership role following the policies of Donald Trump.
I wish we had more pictures of this solar floating farm because they're interesting. It shows pictures of these little, I'll call them mattresses, and
Yeah.
people assembling them and carrying them on their shoulders.
Yeah, they're not exactly heavy. They're
full of air.
They're full of air.
Yeah.
They look like they're heavy because they're big. But
Well, this is the world's largest solar floating farm.
Yep.
And what makes it very interesting, it sits on a lake formed on top of a collapsed and flooded coal mine.
Yes. Which in turn is,
They're not mining coal anymore,
No,
they're
they're not.
mining the sun.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, our next item is from Clean Technica, and this is coming back to home, and it's very interesting.
Back home.
Yeah.
Let's, well, I guess I'll leave you, I'll put you up there.
You'll put me up. Okay.
Put you up there. We don't have another picture. Green Mountain Power.
Should I make faces at people?
Green Mountain Power offers a $10,000 rebate on the Nissan Leaf. Then we talked about this last week too.
Yeah, it was a different company. It was also in Vermont, but it was a different company.
Or was it?
Yeah, I think it was
was-
Washington Electric.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
It was. Yeah.
So we've got two of
We got
these.
two of them now.
Yeah.
Same deal.
Same deal. Green Mountain, well, not identical, but it's the same in the overall stuff. It's the same. Green Mountain Power, the largest utility in Vermont, is promoting another aggressive clean energy offer to its customers. Now through September 30th, GMP customers can visit Freedom Nissan in South Burlington and claim a $10,000 rebate on the purchase of a new 2017 Nissan Leaf by presenting a special code supplied by GMP.
Well, the numbers here add up because people who take advantage of this offer will also be able to claim up to a $7,500 federal tax credit.
Yeah, you can pay for
So if
half
you
of your
buy a
car right there.
Brand new Nissan base model Nissan Leaf S for about $12,500, which is less than half price. This is amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty good. And here is Mary Powell, who is, we've said it before. She's the kind of woman who could step into a phone booth, pull off her shirt, and come out with a blue jersey with a big S on it.
She's a pretty good executive. That's
She's
for sure. Green
amazing.
Mountain Power is doing some good stuff.
She is amazing. Okay, that was from Clean Technica. Our next item.
Well, there's a little.
Oh, you want to say
I just
something
wanted
about it? Go ahead.
While Green Mountain Power is beating the drum for clean energy, the state's regulators are imposing new setback and noise level rules on wind turbines that are some of the toughest in the country. If adopted, the new rules would leave only 0.2% of Vermont's land available for the installation of wind turbines.
Well,
And according to the critics, they upset the cows, cause a heartbreak of psoriasis, and ruin the pristine tranquility of the Green Mountain State. NIMBY is alive and thriving in Vermont.
yeah.
It has really nothing to do with this, but it was part of the article,
Well,
and it's hitting close to home.
it's hitting close to home. One of the things that I find distressing about that is that if we don't generate our power in Vermont, we're going to have new power lines all over the place because we're going to have to be powering electric vehicles and electric heat.
Well, distributed power is the answer.
Distributed
but we've got to
power.
make it easier. We can't
We've
be
got to
putting-
make it easier. And
And I
climate
don't want to
change,
see a turbine on every mountaintop.
I don't either, but
But I think
we
there's some
can't
plenty
put,
good places.
we cannot put turbines on every
No.
mountaintop. Only about an eighth of the mountaintops we've got are even
Or even
places that could be
Useful.
used
Yeah.
for those, and we don't need all of them.
no.
But we do need to generate our power locally and and stop using fossil fuels, or we're going to have to bring in huge amounts of power from elsewhere as we convert to electric vehicles and electric heat.
Because that's happening.
Yeah.
They're talking about electric heat. This is a variation on electric heat that we're going to talk about right now.
The one from
This is from
Renew Economy.
Clean Technica.
You're thinking about Dandelion. You've skipped one.
Okay, I'm skipping one. Yep.
Think,
We got
think
one coming up
Progress,
here
Renew
that's
Economy. It's still the 18th of July.
coal, nuclear, and renewable bombshells from Trump's grid study.
Oh, I remember when we talked about this grid study the first time.
Yeah.
And we've been speculating about this thing all along, saying, what are these people going to say? Because if they tell the truth, it's going to be very different from what
they want us to know.
they want us to know. Well, I don't know what's going on in Rick Perry's mind. I have no idea. But, there's going to be a lot of people in the administration who are upset about this. Think Progress obtained a copy of Energy Secretary Rick Perry's grid study, and it has many surprises for those who are not energy experts. They may be unpleasant surprises to Perry and the White House. For instance, a large fraction of America's aging fleet of coal and nuclear plants are simply not economic to operate anymore.
Well, we've been talking about that.
We have been. But, I saw this coming, you saw this coming, other people saw this coming. All of our viewers have been hearing it talked about for years, literally. Renewable power is getting so cheap that it's hard to avoid.
One of the things that Perry is saying is that renewable sources like solar and wind are undermining the U.S. electric grid's reliability, which is absolute nonsense.
Yeah.
It's a lie.
And there have been other studies that have come up in the meantime that have basically said, why would you say that? The American grid is more reliable than it ever has been before, and it's getting more reliable yet as renewable energy resources are being brought online. And the same experience happened in Germany.
And renewables will be getting cheaper.
Yeah, renewables will be getting cheaper, and every place that is going to more and more renewables is getting more and more reliable. And there's a reason for that. And the reason is easy to see. One of the first things that I remember coming across, and it may have been before I started the blog, but it was after I started doing the daily research, because I did the research and distributed it by email for a year before I started the blog. And that was a little over 5 years ago that I started the blog. But there was a power outage that happened in West Australia, as I recall. And what happened was a coal burning power plant suddenly tripped.
Yeah.
Nobody expected this.
This has nothing to do with the windstorm.
No, nothing to do with the windstorm. A coal burning power plant suddenly tripped, and this meant that the grid was suddenly scrambling to find access.
Suddenly way unbalanced.
Well, the price of electricity went to over $1,000 per megawatt hour.
For a very short period.
For a short period of time. It was down under $2,000 per megawatt hour within an hour. But at one interval there, the price of electricity went to over $1,000 per megawatt hour, which is over $1 per kilowatt hour.
Okay.
And
a little bit high.
It was actually, is that right? No, it was over $10,000 per megawatt hour.
Was it really?
It was like $10 per kilowatt hour.
Versus what, about 15 cents?
Yeah, exactly. and if you think about this, if you have the countryside covered with wind turbines, and you've got, the wind is blowing here, but it's not blowing there, so some of them are producing, some of them are not. What happens is, if you lose a wind turbine, so what? And
that's what they mean by distributed power.
Exactly. So, this is one of the reasons. And then you've got the virtual power plants. And distributed power is distributed not only geographically, but also among technologies, which means that when the sun is not shining, the wind is blowing. And if neither is producing power, then you can get power from other renewable resources, such as hydro. So anyway, should we go on?
Yeah, let's move on.
We're up to Wednesday, July 19th, and this is from Clean Technica, and this is important for people in Vermont, New Hampshire, New York, and so forth,
Absolutely. We've
to
got a picture coming
understand. And this is dandelion. There it is.
Okay, there it is.
Well, there it is. Got a title?
Yeah, Google creates dandelion, which I guess they just pulled out of the air.
I have no idea. Maybe
To
they
promote
said
geothermal energy. It doesn't seem to have any meaning.
it doesn't. No, but nevertheless, maybe they're hoping that these things are going to sprout up like dandelions. It could be. Google set up an independent business outside the Alphabet umbrella. I don't know what that is. I don't know. Called Dandelion. The new company was created to promote new geothermal system technology. Dandelion will attempt to do for residential heating and cooling what SolarCity has done for rooftop solar. It uses new, less expensive drilling technology. Now, I read that article. I couldn't understand what that meant.
Yeah, I couldn't either.
But one of the things that was important here was that you could get geothermal power, no money down.
With their deal.
With their deal.
Yeah. This Google's doing this.
Google is doing this. And furthermore, like all these markets that you hear about, wonderful new cars and so forth, it seems like everything happens in California. This is happening here in the Northeast. It's New York and New England.
It's ideal for New York and New England.
Yeah, it is.
But while you're looking at that picture, I'll give you a quick rundown of what is going on here. Earth-based geothermal is based on the idea that the temperature of Earth remains fairly constant from season to season and year to year. The ground stays about 50 degrees Fahrenheit year-round. In the wintertime, and that's the one on the right, water circulating through U-shaped plastic tubes, that's an interesting thing, installed in your yard absorbs heat from the earth. Then a pump inside your home turns it into warm air. In the summertime, the pump draws the warm air out of your home, and the so-called ground loops disperse the heat back into the earth.
Yep. And what happens in the earth is heated by the sun. It's cooled by or heated by the air. It's heated by the interior of the earth, and it's got water running through it. So the temperature is constantly
very constant.
It's very constant. And I had a friend who told me a trick. He said, if you're in any place in the world and you want to know what the average temperature is, if you dig down 5 feet and measure the temperature of the earth, that's going to be the average temperature of the air year round.
Is it really?
Yeah.
That's an interesting
It's not exact, but it's close. And if you think about heat pumps, a heat pump is easy to comprehend, because if you think about it, what's happening in a house with air conditioning is the air conditioning is removing heat from a cool room. The room is already cool compared to outside.
Absolutely.
So
a heat pump is very much like a refrigerator.
Yeah, it's taking heat from the cool room and pushing it out into the hot outside.
It's just transferring the heat.
Exactly. And a refrigerator is taking the heat from outside of the cold refrigerator and pushing it into the warm kitchen.
Yeah.
And that's why it's called a pump.
Yeah.
And the technological stuff behind that we could probably explain, but I could explain it. I don't know that anybody would understand what I was saying.
Well, this article is kind of obscure. They don't really want to tell you what they're doing, but they want to tell you what they're doing.
Yeah.
We designed a better drill that reduces the time, mess, and hassle of installing these U-shaped pipes, which reduces the final cost of a system to the homeowners. It drills deep holes just a few inches wide and produces less waste and takes up much less space as it operates.
Yep.
It's fast and installs all the ground loops in less than a day instead of 3 or 4 days. And they're talking about as an alternative bringing in a big drilling rig.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So obviously they got something small and quick, and they're not tipping their hand.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's good news.
Yes, it is. No question about that. Should we move on?
Yeah, I think we should.
Our next item is from Clean Technica.
Jerry Brown and Michael Bloomberg launch America's Pledge, a Paris Agreement initiative.
Responding to the U.S. withdrawal from the Paris Climate Agreement, California Governor Jerry Brown and Michael Bloomberg, who is the former mayor of New York, have launched America's Pledge. It is a new initiative that they hope will gather together and quantify all the action taken by states, cities, and businesses across the U.S. to meet the agreement's goals. And it's interesting here that Michael Bloomberg was instrumental in the cities part of that movement, and Jerry Brown was a leader in the states.
Okay. Well, what they're trying to do is bring together the private and public sector in an effort to ensure that the United States, quote, remains a global leader in reducing emissions and delivers the country's ambitious climate goals of the Paris Agreement.
Yeah, I wish they were ambitious. They're not, unfortunately.
You wish what?
I wish they were ambitious. They're not. Our Paris Climate Agreement goals are not what I would call ambitious.
They're not terribly ambitious, but they're a step in the right direction.
They're a step in the right direction, but honestly, I think if we did nothing, we would achieve them. We're seeing damage.
Economics is going to dictate in the long term.
And the damage that's being done by climate change already is mind-boggling. It's going into scores of billions of dollars that the U.S. economy is being hit now. And I could argue that just in flood insurance, I'm sorry, not flood insurance, just in the cost of flooding, that would not have happened if it were not for climate change. We're being hit by somewhere between $15 and $30 billion a year, and that's just flooding. It doesn't count droughts. It doesn't count ice storms. It doesn't count wind storms. It doesn't count forest fires. It doesn't. You can go through a list of. Yeah. It doesn't count the extra cost of medical expenses. It doesn't cost the. Count the, and just go on and on and on.
Well, the 1,000-year flood is becoming the 100-year flood.
Yeah, and the 500-year flood is happening every third year. It's crazy.
So we've got a picture coming up.
We do indeed, yes. And this is kind of a pretty little picture of a pretty little company. This is from North American Wind Power.
It's kind of a nice little bucolic scene.
Yeah.
Where's the cows?
Huh?
Where's the cows?
I don't know, but if you look at that, you can see that there's a small building off to the side of that.
Yeah.
And that small building kind of gives you the scale of that wind turbine. That is a small wind turbine.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's not a very big wind turbine.
Yeah.
Wind energy proves to be a good fit on a New York farm.
Northern Power Systems, a wind turbine maker based in Barre, Vermont, says it has seen a surge of interest in wind power and distributed energy, which is behind the meter on-site generation, applications in the United States. Specifically, the advantages have become evident in dairy and farming operations, the company says. Well, by golly, it seems to me that when I was a little kid, I spent half my childhood in Illinois, and there were wind turbines on farms, lots of them, and they were going around and around pumping water, so the cows would always have water to drink.
Have you ever seen a Western movie that didn't have some of those things in it?
Actually, I have, but nevertheless, yeah.
No, they were to pump water for the cows.
That's what they did.
Basically, and they just pumped whenever
whenever the wind was going, they were pumping, and if the wind wasn't going, they weren't pumping, and if the wind kept going and going and going, they kept pumping and pumping and pumping, and the tub below the thing would overflow, and the ground would be wet, and the cows would be wandering around with their feet wet.
Well, this is an interesting little article. It's about a New York farm, and with this renewable net metering exists in New York State, they were able to site a turbine in the windiest part of this farm and power all the meters in 5 different locations remotely. It's a big farm.
Yeah.
Okay, it's got several thousand cows.
Yeah.
And the monthly electric bills have dropped 65%. Duh! So they put in a second turbine.
Yeah. So the power bills dropped another 65%, and by golly, they had a negative 30% power bill. It reminds me of the guy who invented a new carburetor for his car and put it in, and he put in a new exhaust system. The carburetor reduced consumption of gasoline by 40%, and computer-driven electronic system reduced consumption by 20%, and the changes in aerodynamics dropped them by 30%, and you just go on and on and on. And he took his car and he filled it up and he drove down the street, and all of a sudden somebody was waving his hand at him and saying, "Stop, stop!" And he got out and realized that his gas tank was overflowing. Sorry. Okay,
boy.
it's time to escape from bad jokes. So I will wish you all a good week.
Still